Well, let's turn our attention now to our weekly feature. This is where we speak to experts and news editors about some of the big stories of the week and what to expect also in the coming 7 days. Spaza shops and illegal mining in the northwest continue to dominate headlines as more Zamazamas emerged from a disused mine in Stilfontein. Just some of the big stories that we'll look at from the week. But joining us to have this conversation or be part of the conversation yourself, in fact, get in touch with us via WhatsApp at numbers 072 110 5584 or give us a call 010 594 6010. We are, of course, joined by Caxton, Greater Johannesburg Editor-in-Chief, Marietta Lombard, as well as a political analyst, Professor Sethulego Matebesi. Correct. Prof, a good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I think I'll start with you. The issue of Spaza shops continuing to be a really contentious one, and, you know, the president also speaking to the community of Orlando, saying, do not take the law into your own hands. I think let's start with this, about whether or not from a political leadership point of view, the right messaging has been used here to deal with the matter.
No, good evening, Naledi. Good evening to my fellow guests and to the viewers. Well, look, this has been a long-standing issue, but probably an issue that had been ventilated in the public domain was the time frame, which we all know that, you know, once you limit, you want to do the right thing, but actually you're limiting people in terms of restricting them in terms of the time frames, then that in itself may just lead to situations where other people will go and illegally register people on behalf of these foreign-owned Spaza shops. And I don't think that in itself will solve the long-term, you know, problem that the government actually wants to solve. But yes, it is the right decision that have been taken, but my main concern is about the time frame that have been allocated to such a very crucial and fundamental aspect.
Yeah, Marietta, I'm going to bring you in here because obviously, as you look at the news coming out of the province and I suppose the Greater Johannesburg, you know, I'm keen to hear just the sort of discussions that you see taking place, you know, your coverage of this issue as well, and themes that really pop up for you as things that are going to be talking points even in the weeks that follow.
Yes, look, I think the Spaza shops has been a contentious issue for our communities from Johannesburg throughout to Ekurhuleni. And it all basically got to a boiling point with the children and the poisoning incidents, and then the call for the Spaza shops to register. I think in the coming weeks it would be communities and local business owners, not the Spaza shop owners, getting together and having their voice and their voice heard. You know, for the communities themselves to form some form of formal structure to be part of the process, and then let's see from there on.
Yeah. What do you make, Marietta, around the pace of how, I suppose, law enforcement and government is dealing with the issue? I'm seeing some pieces talking about how over 1,000 Spaza shops and warehouses have been shut down over the past, I think, 2 weeks. But is that working fast enough? And it's one thing to close the Spaza shops, but are we dealing with, I suppose, going to the root of supply chain here, Marietta?
I think we need to be honest with each other and call a spade and say it should have happened earlier. It is only when we were reporting deaths that there was some action taken, and that we saw movement and local or provincial government visiting these areas. So I think it is to do everything in a rush now. The time allocated is not enough. The Spaza shops, they do form part of our local economies, whether we, you know, welcome it or not. They do provide some form of service. I do not think the supply chain there's enough time to fully investigate or probe the supply chains. So no, I think it's all a bit of a rush to catch up with that which we missed earlier.
Yeah, you know, the president also this week, as he addressed the National Council of Provinces, talking about, you know, this issue, and really, you know, I suppose taking note, Prof, of the 200,000 Spaza shops that have been inspected in this recent blitz. And I wonder if that's satisfactory. The same question perhaps to you, Prof, around supply chain. Are we getting to the bottom of this? And what is it going to look like when we start to see a resolution to this issue? Or how do we know that we're getting close? Prof.
Yeah, well, that's a very difficult question to respond to, because what we have become accustomed to in South Africa, and if you look at it, it's a cycle of what I would say events that could have been prevented in South Africa. We're now talking about Spaza shop, and I'm already asking what will be the next issue that catch us napping, because really we've been napping with such a bloated governance structures at every single level of government. You should have inspectors, and this whole notion that we don't have inspectors, we've got municipalities throughout South Africa. Where are your community development workers, your local councillor, word-based councillor? They should be the interaction, the mouthpiece of the most vulnerable. And here we're trying now to deal with issues that has to do with supply chain, something that, as and I agree with my fellow guests, that in actual fact, this is a matter that should have been responded to a long time. It should have been a matter of, it's business as usual as we speak now. And it will be very interesting to see after this 21 days, what will we have achieved. Yes, shutting down warehouses and Spaza shop, it's one thing, but we need to deal with the fundamental root, the root cause of all these problems. How does foreigners come to open these shops? And a lot of other issues that needs to be dealt on head on.
Yeah, and I know that, Marietta, of course, your focus also being on the greater Joburg Metro, but one story that was so impossible to ignore is Stilfontein. I mean, we saw some of these alleged illegal miners coming to the surface. Many of them minors, right, underage. And then, of course, as we start to see, I suppose, the details come out, you're then able to see just how extreme the conditions are that these men, and now we know some children, were living in. I mean, we're talking about a shaft that goes deeper than 1.5 kilometers. These illegal miners allegedly climbing for days to get to the surface. I mean, it's quite a grim picture when you start to imagine it, right? I mean, anything that stands out that perhaps, really shocked you about what we're seeing there?
Nothing. It's not the first time I've seen it.
Sure.
This is again brings me back to too little, too late. It's only because of the number of illegal miners that were found that we are paying attention, and because they were found in a mine. This is the thing that's been happening for 18 months or so in Ekurhuleni and Johannesburg, is where illegal miners were found inside properties, locked inside houses, Benoni, Germiston, even Edenvale, where you would find 20 to 30 men locked inside a single bedroom. Or in Germiston, they found over 100 men locked inside a single house. All the same modus operandi. The house, the property will be barred, the windows will be barred, locked, and the living conditions were horrible. Now, whether it's thousands inside a mine or hundreds inside a single property with no running water or food, and when they hit these houses, there were also miners found inside those properties. This is the concern. Why are the investigators not talking to each other? When we started asking questions, or journalists across Ekurhuleni and Johannesburg started talking to each other, we managed to put one and one together. Benoni connecting Germiston, connecting Edenvale, and so forth. It was only when we inquired with the authorities or the investigators that we had to make them aware there are similarities to these properties when these hits were made. Now, so again, it brings me back to too little, too late. Whether these guys at Stilfontein were found in a mine, inside a mine, or we've had 18 months of reported already of illegal miners who were brought in, promised jobs, and it's run by well-structured syndicates. These guys know what they're doing. So they promised jobs, they brought into South Africa, and then they locked inside properties. So again, it's too little too late. And I fear, I have to ask myself, do we have the expertise? Because it comes down to human trafficking also. Do we have the expertise to investigate that? I'm not saying we don't, but I don't think we have enough. I don't think our officers have enough, or our police service.
Because, and here's the thing, and I wonder, Prof, if you feel that we give enough attention to the issue of human trafficking, and I mean, Marietta making quite a point there around what we've been able to find in some houses. I remember a story earlier on this year about a house in Lyndhurst. You may remember that was holding, I think, maybe just over 100 men. I may not be too sure about the amount of men there, but the pictures, horrific, right, of people that are being brought in, and we hear over and over again that South Africa is a transit for trafficking, but now it seems also a destination. Where are we getting it wrong, Prof, and who needs to step it up?
Yes, Mariette spoke about perhaps not having, sufficient resources to deal with this particular matter. But what is shocking for me, and perhaps this sheds light on the violent criminal ecosystem in South Africa. That makes sense why we are ranked as one of the most violent countries and rank high in terms of criminality, because you've got undocumented foreigners. And we don't say all of them are contributing to this, but at the moment, if you've got such a large number of people flocking around, undocumented, no physical addresses, and I'm asking myself, how many of these people are involved in some of these brazen crimes that we have seen in South Africa, where people are being murdered on a daily basis and just then flock back to some of these hiding spaces. That, for me, tells us perhaps we don't have the political appetite, because the question is, how long should it take for people in power to deal with that? Because that is one of the responsibilities of a responsible government, to protect people. I mean, people are living in fear when the evening dust sets down, the sun sets. Some people are really terrified because of the level of crime that they have been exposed to. And I strongly believe that once our political leaders, once and for all, say we are not going to allow this to happen in our name, perhaps we will start to see some decisive intervention on this particular matter of undocumented foreigners.
I mean, because the numbers are startling. Even the example that I made earlier of Lyndhurst in Johannesburg, it was 90 people that were squashed into a house that was, derelict and left alone. And the question is, where were these Ethiopian men going? And certainly what was the intention of them being in the country. But we're taking calls, 0105946010. This is for us to really talk about the stories that, or the events of the week that really concerned you or caught your attention. Willie is on the line in Boksburg. Willie, good evening. Thanks for calling.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, so go ahead, talk to us.
Yeah. Look, I just want also to comment on this thing of not only about the shops where sadly so many children died. My thing is, what is the government's criteria in order to have foreigners in the country? Because I'm traveling a lot, especially outside the borders of this country. And I know that first thing is no one can go to Botswana, for instance, and go and do a job where you sweep. You understand? They'll tell you that we got our own people that can do that types of jobs. But when you look at in our country, not only the Somalis, that they come and set up a Spaza shop. So what's so difficult to run a Spaza shop that we have these people just come here and do Spaza shops? The same with this, the Nigerians. When you look at them, they're roaming around here, no profession, not even doing some sort of professional job. They open up the shops of fixing TVs and all those types, but in the background they do this funny job that they do, because you can see the reason why they're selling and fixing the so-called Kama TVs is that our kids break into our houses, the ones using those drugs. They break into our houses, they take the TV and take it to them, and there they just give them some drugs, and they got TVs and
it's
like
massive
some sort
societal
of
issues.
TV.
Yeah, massive societal issues. And I think you've raised a really important point around how we legislate around allowing foreign nationals to do business in the state, and if there's gaps there, perhaps a conversation to take further. Thank you so much, Willie, for calling. We're taking more calls on 010-594-6010, or send us a WhatsApp on 072-110-5584. Well, let's look at another issue now. Time really flies, Prof. Hard to believe that it's already been, or it's close to a year now that we've had the existence of the MK party. They're going into their 1-year anniversary, and then it seems like their eyes sharply focused on KwaZulu-Natal. Your thoughts on whether or not we could see, Tamin Tuli facing a motion of no confidence in KwaZulu-Natal, and just talk to me about the growth of the MK party as we reflect on a year of this political movement.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at MK, I strongly believe that many political parties, not only our ANC, which have been ruling South Africa for more than almost 3 decades, are still looking at the cobwebs of this particular party, because it has been a huge challenge for all political parties. But and it seems this party is very attractive to many politicians for now. And attracting many members from EFF, but I strongly believe that I can't see the difference between MK in terms of its governance and the EFF, if they want to blame the EFF for that. But there is great potential for this particular party in KwaZulu-Natal on the basis of the support that they will get from that particular province. And we know also in terms of the number of voters in that, it's actually most likely that we will be able to win back KwaZulu-Natal perhaps in future. But it will also depend on how they're going to navigate around negotiating with other parties in that particular province. But they've been doing quite well. But internally, I'm concerned with how they've been handling some of the issues. And perhaps if they don't manage that quite well, it may also come to haunt this particular party as it grows and attracting many career politicians who I strongly believe are also joking and eyeing positions within this party. Will they have sufficient grounded positions to satisfy everyone?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that we've been watching as well, and you can talk to me about your coverage of it as well, Marietta, but you know, as we see the growth of the MK party, you're also looking at what is happening with the economic freedom fighters, for instance, you know, and the spat that we saw this week, Julius Malema coming out quite openly criticizing the MK party, and then the MK party coming out and saying, we're not going to debate with Julius Malema or the EFF. But what do you make around the growth of this party and what it means for the other political parties that are watching?
Look, I think it was, nobody expected the party. I certainly didn't expect them to get that such support during the national elections. I'm very interested to see how well or how they fare in the upcoming or the next local government elections. I think it's going to make for some interesting council meetings. I think it's going to make for some interesting mayoral committees. I do, you know, it's for us, we look at the local government level. The only problem is that when you have that type of, you've got another role player coming in, and very often it becomes a play for power, especially when it comes to a council sitting and you have to decide on a budget. Ekurhuleni went through months of not having a mayor because of power struggle between EFF and ANC. Now you've got a third guy joining this big fight, and you have to wonder wonder how long or how's this going to further impact. That type of what we need is productive council meetings, and they just no longer are. That is the major concern for any taxpayer in a metro. Is we don't make the decisions because there's constantly fighting, and now you've got quite a strong role player joining the party, or, well, you know, the sitting.
Yeah, 100%. And you talk about local government, I immediately think about what we see as a service delivery crisis as well in an area like KwaZulu-Natal, eThekwini, a big talking point, Prof, and I'll bring this one to you. You've got Begim Dolo, for instance, the ANC provincial secretary for KZN, saying that there needs to be accountability collectively within the party as to, you know, how the May 29 elections really went for the African National Congress. But there's something to be said about whether or not we're seeing that working at local government level for a party like the ANC that certainly needs to hold on to an area like eThekwini and areas like KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah, well, the ANC has always been strong. As if you go and look at all the local government elections outcome, strong as in eThekwini in the past, and then even Mangaung in the country. And you can see the challenges, the inroad that opposition parties have made. And the presence of MK, for me, and it's not about service delivery, it's not about making pronouncement about accountability. These are standards. Actually, for me, it's academic. It's just getting the basics right. You get a grant of 100 million. Let at least 90 million of that money, of 95 million, go to what it is intended for. But the situation that we have in this country is that we make all this horrible mistake, and just look at the recent Auditor General reports, and then you also get a sense of how we respond to situations such as lack of service delivery, lack of accountability, lack of consequence management, where we say there seems to be progress and we clap hands and we applaud progress, but yet more than 10, 15 billion is unaccounted. There should be consequences, and I would say, and I'm going to be blunt, we should actually be building more prisons for some of our public servants, and many of them are doing a great job. We should not take that away, but it's really unacceptable in this age of AI, the highly industrialized nation, that we battle to get the basics right in terms of service delivery. So for me, it's just but mere rhetoric and nothing else.
Yeah, I want to take one caller quickly. We have Sefudi on the line in Randfontein. Sefudi, a good evening to you. Thank you so much for calling. Now I'm wondering if you were, saved from that tornado this week.
Yes, we survived it barely by an inch, Ms. Moleo. And your guests, how are you?
Well, so they're nodding. They're nodding, yes.
Yes, I think what is the devil in our society and our country is the non-implementation of the bylaws. And I think what is happening in this country, it's chicks coming home to roost. I remember around 2008 when people were up in arms about immigration, Thabo Mbeki told people in the East Rand that whether they like it or not, immigrants, people will come to this country. We didn't say people should not come. We said there should be control like any other country. If you come to this country, Ms. Moleo, you must tell us what are you here for and how are you going to survive in this country when you are not working, when you don't have a source of sustenance. Good evening to you.
Good evening to you, Ndate Sefudi. Thank you so much for calling. Let's see a WhatsApp that's come in as well this evening on some of the big stories or the events of the week that really stood out and perhaps concerned you. Pom Hlungu says, good evening. The story that stood out for me is police and SARS raiding the home of Sean Mkiza in La Lucia, Durban. That one getting lips and tongues wagging. Definitely. Nosipho Dlamini saying, evening, Naledi. South Africa has been hijacked, and what's shocking is the government not doing anything about foreigners going to give us a civil war. Oh, really concerning. Thank you so much for that WhatsApp, though, Nosipho. I think before we go, just before I wrap it up, Marietta, stories that you're watching for the week that we're going into.
I think Joburg Water remains an ongoing concern, talking about service delivery. Westbury residents took to the streets on Wednesday as it is. You know, some residents there have been without water for 70 days. We're talking about a basic human right, yeah? So that Joburg water is an ongoing developing story that we're keeping an eye on. And it's particularly bad, it seems, in Johannesburg. Then obviously, you know, the Skuman case that we're following and we're in court, although we can't discuss that one in detail. It again ties into human trafficking and the serious offences that happen, you know, under our nose. So those ones, but Joburg water would be my main one.
Okay, and we'll be watching very closely. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Marietta Lombard, Editor-in-Chief of Caxton Greater Joburg Metro. And thanks as well for the analysis, Professor Sethulego Matebesi, speaking to us this evening. And we'll chat some more in the future. Keep the WhatsApps coming in, the 072-110-5584. We take a short break. When we come back, we take a closer look at World AIDS Day. Stay with us.